The massive crystal spires of the Astralese embassy towered over Nathan Reed as he adjusted his diplomatic uniform one final time. At 6 feet tall, he rarely felt small, but the alien architecture seemed designed to make other species feel insignificant. Perhaps that was the point. Remember, his earpiece crackled with his advisor's voice, Queen Orissa has rejected every human diplomatic mission for the past decade. Don't expect this one to be different. Nathan smiled, smoothing back his dark hair. There's a first time for everything, Marcus. The massive doors parted silently, revealing a throne room that seemed carved from a single massive diamond. Light fractaled through the walls, creating dancing patterns that almost distracted from the impressive figure seated on the crystalline throne. Queen Orissa of the Astralese Empire was unlike anything in humanity's experience. She rose to her full height, easily 12 feet tall, her iridescent skin shimmering with patterns that seemed to shift with her emotions. Crown-like crystalline formations emerged naturally from her head, catching the light and creating halos of color around her. Her 4 eyes, each a different shade of violet, regarded Nathan with obvious disdain. So, her voice resonated through the chamber, Earth sends another diplomat to waste my time. She descended the steps of her throne, each movement fluid and precise. Though I must admit, they've at least sent one that's somewhat pleasant to look at this time. Nathan maintained his diplomatic smile, though his heart raced at her proximity. Your Majesty honors me. I am Nathan Reed, representing the United Earth Coalition. Yes, yes, she waved a hand dismissively, her skin patterns shifting to something Nathan's cultural training identified as amusement. Here to propose another trade agreement. Or perhaps to beg for access to our crystalline technology. Actually, Nathan kept his voice steady, I'm here to warn you about an imminent threat to both our species. That got her attention. Her patterns shifted to a deeper hue, and she circled him slowly. Oh. And what could possibly threaten the Astralese Empire that would also concern your primitive species? The Void Swarm, Nathan said simply, triggering a subtle but noticeable reaction in her color patterns. Our deep space sensors detected them 3 days ago. They'll reach your outer colonies first. Impossible, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice. Our detection systems are far superior to anything humans possess. Nathan pulled out a small holographic projector, displaying the sensor data. Your systems are designed to detect energy signatures. The swarm has evolved. They're using dark matter shielding now. Queen Orissa's patterns swirled with conflicting colors as she studied the data. And why would humans warn us? Surely you'd be pleased to see your greatest rival weakened. Because, Nathan met her gaze steadily, if your empire falls, Earth is next. And because despite our differences, I believe both our species deserve to survive. She laughed, though it wasn't entirely unkind. How nobly human of you. But tell me, Nathan Reed, what exactly do you propose? That our mighty empire should bow to human assistance? I propose collaboration. He took a calculated risk and stepped closer. Your crystalline technology combined with our dark matter detection systems. Together, we might stand a chance. Fascinating, she leaned down, bringing her face close to his. Her scent was unexpectedly pleasant, like exotic flowers in ozone. And you volunteered for this mission? Knowing how we've treated human diplomats in the past. Someone had to try. He didn't back away despite their proximity. And I've always enjoyed a challenge. A challenge? Her patterns rippled with something new, something his training hadn't covered. You consider me a challenge to be conquered? Not conquered, he corrected carefully. Understood. Collaborated with. Perhaps even befriended. She straightened to her full height, looking down at him with an unreadable expression. You are either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish, Nathan Reed. I've been called both, he admitted with a slight smile. Often in the same day. Before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the embassy. Her skin patterns shifted to alert patterns as she received data through her neural interface. "It seems," she said slowly, "that your warning came too late. The void swarm has been detected in the crystalline belt. They're evolving faster than you predicted." "Then we have no time to waste," Nathan said, already pulling up additional data on his projector. "Your Majesty, I know you think humans are beneath you. But right now, we need each other." She studied him for a long moment, her patterns swirling with conflicting emotions. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, Nathan Reed. You have my attention. But remember this, if this is some human deception, I will personally ensure that Earth becomes nothing more than cosmic dust." "Understood," he said, unable to suppress a slight grin. "Though I have to say, you're much more intimidating than your holographic broadcasts suggest." Her patterns flickered with what might have been amusement. "And you are much more interesting than your species' reputation suggests. Now, show me what you know about the swarm." As they began planning their defense, neither could have predicted how their forced collaboration would change not just their lives, but the fate of both their species. The Astralese homeworld of Crystalia made Earth's most impressive cities look primitive by comparison. Massive crystalline structures stretched into the violet sky, their surfaces refracting the light of twin suns into rainbow cascades. Nathan Reed stood at the window of his diplomatic quarters, trying to focus on the breathtaking view instead of the chaos unfolding around him. "The void swarm has breached the outer defense grid," his AI assistant reported through his neural link. 3 colony worlds have gone dark." Nathan clenched his jaw. The past week had been a blur of strategic meetings and technological integration attempts. Despite Queen Orissa's reluctant cooperation, centuries of mistrust between their species couldn't be overcome in days. The door chimed, then slid open without waiting for his response. Queen Orissa ducked through the entrance, her iridescent skin patterns swirling with what Nathan had learned to recognize as agitation. "Your information was accurate," she said without preamble. "But your proposed solution is failing. The integration of human dark matter detection systems with our crystalline technology is problematic." The compatibility issues weren't unexpected. Nathan turned to face her. "But we're making progress." "Progress?" Her patterns flashed with frustration. "While we debate and tinker, my people die. Perhaps this alliance was a mistake." "Your Majesty," Nathan started, but alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. The lighting shifted to deep red. "Perimeter breach," Orissa's eyes widened, all 4 pupils dilating. "Impossible. Our planetary defenses." An explosion rocked the building. Nathan's diplomatic training kicked in as he assessed escape routes, but Orissa moved faster than he expected. She grabbed his arm, her grip firm but careful not to crush his human bones. "The void swarm isn't responsible for this," she said, pulling him toward a concealed door. "This is an internal attack. The purist faction has been waiting for an excuse. The ones who oppose any cooperation with other species?" Nathan asked as they hurried through hidden corridors. "They believe the Astralese should remain pure," her voice carried bitter anger. "They would rather see our empire fall than accept help from lesser beings." Another explosion, closer this time. The crystal walls around them resonated with the impact, creating an eerie harmonic vibration. "They're targeting you specifically," Orissa said as they reached what appeared to be a dead end. "To end the alliance." "Targeting me?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I'm flattered, but surely there are bigger problems right now." Her patterns shifted to something he hadn't seen before, concern, perhaps. "You underestimate your importance. Your death would end any hope of cooperation between our species. The purists know this." The wall before them dissolved, revealing a small chamber. "Get in," she ordered. "What about you?" "I am their queen," her patterns pulsed with determination. "It's time I reminded them why." Before Nathan could protest, she pushed him into the chamber. This will take you to a secure location. Wait for my signal. Orissa, he caught her hand, surprising them both with the informal address. Be careful. For a moment, her patterns swirled with complex emotions he couldn't read. Then she pulled away, the chamber sealed, and Nathan felt himself dropping rapidly through the crystal structure of the palace. The next few hours were a blur of movement through automated transport systems. When he finally emerged, he found himself in what appeared to be a private sanctuary. Crystal walls rose around a garden of bioluminescent plants, their soft glow providing gentle illumination. "Welcome to my private retreat," Orissa's voice came from behind him. He turned to find her looking more worn than he'd ever seen her, her patterns dimmed with exhaustion. The purists? Dealt with, for now. She moved to a crystalline fountain, trailing her fingers through the glowing liquid. But they've succeeded in one thing: the attack destroyed our primary integration facility. The prototype systems are gone. Nathan processed this. So we're back to square one. Worse, she turned to face him. The purists have allies throughout the empire. You're no longer safe in any official capacity. Her patterns shifted to something resolute. Which is why, officially, you died in the attack. I'm dead. Nathan blinked. That's inconvenient. A flash of amusement colored her patterns. You demonstrate remarkable calm for someone who has just been assassinated. I've had an interesting week. He moved closer to the fountain, studying the strange liquid. So what's the unofficial story? Unofficially, you'll remain here, under my protection, while we continue our work. This facility contains a backup integration lab. We can continue our efforts, discreetly. Just the two of us? Nathan asked, noting how her patterns flickered at the question. My most trusted scientists will assist remotely. But yes, primarily it will be just us. Does that concern you? Nathan thought about the growing fascination he'd felt over the past week, watching her patterns shift with her moods, learning to read the subtle meanings in her movements. He thought about how she'd risked her own safety to protect him, despite her supposed disdain for humans. No, he said finally. It doesn't concern me at all. Her patterns rippled with something that might have been pleasure. Good. Because we have work to do, Nathan Reed. And not much time to do it. As night fell and the bioluminescent garden grew brighter, they began planning their next steps. Neither mentioned how their fingers had brushed when she showed him the lab equipment, or how her patterns had shifted to previously unseen colors when he smiled at her. Some things, it seemed, transcended species. Days in Queen Orissa's private sanctuary blurred together as Nathan lost track of time. The bioluminescent garden marked the passing hours with subtle shifts in color, but his focus remained on the integration lab where he and Orissa worked tirelessly to merge their species' technologies. The crystal matrix keeps rejecting the dark matter detection algorithms, Orissa muttered, her skin patterns showing frustration as she manipulated the holographic displays. It's as if they're fundamentally incompatible. Nathan watched her work, noticing how the garden's soft light played across her iridescent skin. He'd grown accustomed to her presence, learning to read the subtle changes in her patterns that betrayed her emotions. Maybe we're thinking about this wrong, he suggested. Instead of forcing them to integrate, what if we created something new? She turned all four eyes to him, her patterns shifting to curiosity. Explain. Your crystalline technology is organic, adaptive. Our dark matter systems are rigid, mathematical. We're trying to make them speak the same language, but maybe they need to create their own. Orissa's patterns swirled with consideration as she moved closer to him. Despite their height difference, they'd developed an easy synchronicity in the lab. You suggest we let the systems evolve together naturally? Exactly. Like. He hesitated, then pressed on, like us. Her patterns flickered rapidly, and she turned away. That's a dangerous comparison, Nathan. Is it? He stepped closer, noting how her patterns rippled at his proximity. We were supposed to be incompatible too. Yet here we are. Working together out of necessity, she said, but her patterns betrayed uncertainty. Is that all this is? Nathan gestured to the space between them. Because I've noticed how your patterns change when we're alone. Colors I've never seen in any of the cultural briefings. Orissa's patterns shifted to deep, complex hues. You've been studying my patterns? I've been studying you, he admitted. The way you move, the subtle changes in your voice, how your crystals catch the light differently depending on your mood. Nathan, her voice carried a warning, but she didn't move away. There are boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. My species considers genetic purity sacred. And yet you saved me, he pressed. Protected me. Brought me to your private sanctuary. Why? She turned back to him, her full height imposing but somehow no longer intimidating. Because you fascinate me, she admitted, her patterns showing vulnerability he'd never seen before. Your species should be primitive, beneath notice. But you see things differently. Think differently. Feel. Her words trailed off as Nathan reached up, carefully touching one of the crystal formations that crowned her head. The contact sent a subtle vibration through both of them. We feel the same things, he said softly. Different biology, different cultures, but the same core emotions. Orissa's patterns exploded in a display of colors he'd never seen before. She leaned down, bringing her face close to his. This is madness, she whispered, but her patterns spoke of desire. The best kinds of change usually are, Nathan replied, and closed the distance between them. The kiss was unlike anything either had experienced. Her skin radiated warmth, patterns flowing like liquid light beneath his touch. The crystal formations on her head hummed with energy, creating a subtle resonance that seemed to connect them on a deeper level. When they finally parted, Orissa's patterns were chaos of emotion. The purists would call this sacrilege, she said, but made no move to pull away. And what do you call it? She touched his face with surprising gentleness. Evolution, perhaps. Or revolution. Her patterns settled into a steady, glowing rhythm. This changes everything. It already has. Nathan turned back to the lab displays. Look. The crystal matrix had responded to their emotional energy, its patterns shifting and adapting. The dark matter algorithms were no longer fighting the integration, they were dancing with it, creating new patterns of their own. Impossible, Orissa breathed, watching the systems merge naturally. The emotional resonance, it created a bridge. Like I said, Nathan smiled, sometimes we need to let things evolve on their own. As they watched their technologies finally begin to merge, Orissa's hand found his. Her patterns had settled into colors he'd never seen in any official documentation, colors, he suspected, that were meant for him alone. But their moment of triumph was interrupted by an alert from the security systems. The Void Swarm had breached another defense line, and reports were coming in of strange biological changes in the affected populations. We need to accelerate the integration, Orissa said, her patterns shifting to determination though she didn't release his hand. And Nathan, what's happening between us? Stays between us, he finished. For now. She nodded, but her patterns told a different story, one of hope, fear, and something deeper neither of them dared name yet. As they returned to their work, the air between them had changed, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Neither suspected that their private revolution was about to become very public, in a way that would shake both their civilizations to their core. The first signs were subtle. Queen Orissa's crystalline formations began emitting unusual frequencies, and her color patterns displayed hues that even she had never seen before. But it was the morning she collapsed in the integration lab that changed everything. Your Majesty. Nathan caught her before she hit the ground, her tall frame surprisingly light in his arms. Her skin patterns were cycling through colors rapidly, like a aurora borealis gone haywire. I'm fine, she insisted, though her 4 eyes struggled to focus. Just a momentary weakness. You're not fine. Nathan helped her to a crystalline bench, already activating the sanctuary's medical scanners. Your core temperature is elevated, and these energy readings. The medical hologram materialized, displaying a complex array of biological data. Nathan's eyes widened as he interpreted the results, his diplomatic training failing him completely. Impossible, he whispered. Orissa's patterns shifted to concern. What is it? You're. He swallowed hard. You're carrying a child. A hybrid child. Her patterns went completely still, a phenomenon he'd never witnessed before. That cannot be. Our species are not compatible. The genetic differences. Look at the scan, Nathan pointed to the hologram. The fetus is surrounded by some kind of crystalline matrix. It's adapting both our genetic codes in real time. Orissa's hands went to her midsection, her patterns now showing a mix of wonder and terror. The integration technology, she realized. When our systems merged, they must have created a template for biological compatibility. Are you all right? Nathan asked softly, reaching for her hand. She intertwined her fingers with his, her size making the gesture both awkward and endearing. I don't know, she admitted. This is unprecedented. If the purists discover this. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the sanctuary. Multiple breaches detected, the security system announced. Royal medical data has been accessed remotely. No, Orissa's patterns flared with panic. They're monitoring the medical systems. They know. Nathan was already moving, securing the lab's entrance. We need to get you somewhere safe. I am the queen, she said, rising to her full height despite her weakness. I will not run. This isn't just about you anymore, Nathan argued, gesturing to her midsection. Our child. He stopped, realizing what he'd said. Orissa's patterns rippled with emotion. Our child, she repeated softly. Then, more firmly, you're right. But I will not hide forever. This child represents everything I've come to believe about our species' future. Perhaps it's time the Empire faced that future. Before Nathan could respond, the sanctuary's crystal walls reverberated with the impact of weapons fire. The purists had arrived. Your Majesty, a voice boomed through the communication system. By the authority of the High Council, you are ordered to surrender for genetic purification. The human will be executed for his crime against our species. Orissa's patterns shifted to colors Nathan had never seen, rage, protection, and something fierce that transcended any cultural briefing. I am your queen, she responded, her voice carrying royal authority even as her hand protectively covered her midsection. You dare to threaten me? To threaten my child? The abomination must not be allowed to exist, the voice replied. The purity of the Astralese bloodline has led us to stagnation, Orissa cut in. While we obsessed over genetic purity, the void swarm evolved. They adapted. And now, finally, so have we. The walls shook with another blast. Nathan checked their defenses. They're breaking through the outer barriers. Orissa turned to him, her patterns now showing a strange calm. Nathan, the integration technology, it didn't just allow our child to exist. It's still working within me, within the crystalline matrix protecting our baby. What are you saying? She smiled, an expression she'd learned from him. I'm saying that perhaps it's time to show them true evolution. She placed her hands on the crystal walls, and suddenly the entire sanctuary hummed with energy. The crystalline structures began to pulse in rhythm with her skin patterns, resonating with frequencies that made Nathan's teeth vibrate. The sanctuary, he realized. It's not just a building. It's a giant crystal matrix. And I am its queen, Orissa said as her skin began to glow with unprecedented power. Let them witness what happens when we stop fighting evolution and embrace it instead. The walls of the sanctuary became transparent, revealing the purest forces surrounding them. But it was Orissa who held everyone's attention. Her 12-foot frame was now wreathed in crystalline energy, her patterns shifting in ways that defied description. The child within her, visible through the medical hologram, pulsed with the same energy, a perfect synthesis of both their species. My people, her voice carried to all corners of the crystal city. Look upon your future. Not the death of our species, but its rebirth. The attacking forces hesitated, weapons lowered in awe. Nathan moved to stand beside her, and the energy field expanded to encompass him too, their child's signature creating a bridge between their biologies. The choice is yours, Orissa continued. Evolution or extinction? Adaptation or decay? What is your answer? The silence that followed would change both their worlds forever. The crystalline spires of the Royal Medical Facility pulsed with unprecedented energy patterns as Queen Orissa went into labor. The entire Astralese Empire held its breath, communication channels alive with speculation about the first human-Astralis hybrid child. Nathan paced outside the birthing chamber, his diplomatic training useless against the anxiety of impending fatherhood. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of change following Orissa's dramatic revelation. The purist faction had fractured, with many younger Astralese seeing the hybrid child as a symbol of necessary evolution. You should be inside, High Healer Vestra emerged from the chamber, her patterns showing amusement at his nervous state. The Queen's energy patterns stabilize in your presence. Inside, Orissa lay within a crystalline birthing matrix, her massive form surrounded by pulsing energy fields. Her patterns shifted between pain and determination as she reached for Nathan's hand. The child's crystalline matrix is unlike anything we've seen, Vestra reported, monitoring the complex holographic displays. It's creating a perfect genetic bridge between your species. Still think humans are beneath you? Nathan asked Orissa teasingly, trying to distract her from another contraction. Her patterns flickered with pained amusement. Perhaps, not all of them. Her grip tightened on his hand. Though I may revise that opinion in the next few minutes. The birthing chamber's crystals began resonating at higher frequencies, responding to Orissa's condition. The child's own energy signature pulsed in harmony with both parents, human resilience wrapped in Astralese crystal. It's time, Vestra announced as the energy readings peaked. What followed would be recorded in both human and Astralese historical archives as a moment of transcendent beauty. The chamber filled with light as Orissa's patterns erupted in new colors, the crystalline matrix adapting and evolving to support the unprecedented birth. Their daughter emerged in a cascade of crystalline energy, her tiny form, smaller than pure Astralese but larger than human infants, already showing signs of both species. Delicate crystal formations crowned her head, and her skin shifted with subtle patterns. But it was her eyes that captured everyone's attention, 3 of them, in shades of both her parents, holding an intelligence that seemed to bridge both civilizations. She's perfect, Nathan whispered, watching in awe as the baby was placed in Orissa's arms. She's more than perfect, Orissa's patterns showed pure joy as their daughter reached up to touch her mother's crystals, creating a resonance between them. She's evolution itself. The news spread across both civilizations. On Earth, celebrations erupted as humans realized they were not alone in the galaxy, not just as allies, but now as family. Throughout the Astralese Empire, even former purists couldn't deny the beauty and potential of this new life. But it was a message from the front lines that proved most significant. The Void Swarm is retreating, the military commander's report came through as Nathan held his daughter. The hybrid energy signature, they can't adapt to it. It's too complex, too evolved. Orissa's patterns showed fierce pride. Of course they can't adapt to her. She represents the best of both our species, not just surviving, but thriving through change. They named her Aurora, for the way her patterns danced like Earth's northern lights across her crystalline flecked skin. She grew quickly, displaying both human creativity and astralese wisdom. Her very existence became a bridge between worlds, proving that evolution meant more than mere survival. One evening, months later, Nathan found Orissa in the palace gardens, watching Aurora play with crystalline energy fields. "The human delegation arrives tomorrow," he reminded her. "They're eager to discuss expanding our alliance." Orissa's patterns showed contentment as she pulled him close. "And what should we tell them about successful human-Astralis relations?" "The truth," Nathan smiled, watching their daughter create impossible patterns of light. "That the greatest strength comes not from purity, but from adaptation. From being willing to evolve. Even if that evolution comes in unexpected ways." Her patterns shifted to the colors reserved only for him. "Especially then," he said, reaching up to touch her crystals in the way he knew she loved. After all, who would have thought the mighty Queen Orissa would not only accept human aid, but fall in love with one? She finished, her patterns rippling with joy. "Perhaps I simply evolved beyond my prejudices." Aurora ran to them, her tricolored eyes bright with discovery, her small form a perfect bridge between their worlds. As they held their daughter between them, both knew that this was more than just their story, it was the beginning of a new chapter for both their species. The crystal spires of the palace caught the setting sun's light, sending rainbow cascades across the city. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the void swarm retreated from the light of evolution itself, proving that sometimes the greatest defense isn't in walls or weapons, but in the courage to break them down and build something new together.